Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions in the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. On this show, I interview lawyers ditching the billable hour and experts who can help attorneys move beyond billing time. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes. More on them later, and use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. You get 10% off, and it supports the show. The best way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Otto Hanson, thrilled to have you on the podcast Law Subscribed. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matthew. Super excited to be here.
So, we got connected on LinkedIn, and I've seen some of the stuff that you're doing for a while. I came into knowledge about you through Term Scout, discovered Screens, which is a really exciting thing I look forward to talking to you about. But just in case my audience hasn't come across you yet, go ahead and give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I started in startups early on, but I'll skip that chapter. Suffice it to say, that chapter is what led me to the law, because as a consumer of legal services, helping run small businesses, I learned quickly how challenging it was to manage legal challenges, to manage legal issues in a way that was cost effective and also that worked. And that drove me to go get a law degree. And that led me to developing a legal practice in a large regional firm in Denver, Colorado, where I sort of started in the corporate float pool and then went and practiced in technology transactions. I only made it a few years there because I quickly ran into some problems that I felt like really needed to be solved and felt like they really could be solved even with technology as it existed, 5 years ago. Boy, if I'd have known what I know now, I might have waited a little bit to get started, but we got a head start and we went out and tried to build a set of solutions to help people understand contracts better. And that was Term Scout, and that is Term Scout. And really what we learned at Term Scout, what we built at Term Scout is a contract review platform that does a really phenomenal job at helping people quickly understand mainly technology contracts. So like SaaS agreements, software contracts, stuff like that. We also do hardware agreements, services agreements, a couple other contract types. We learned how to do that really well because we were experts in those particular contracts. Myself, my co-founder was taught a course, a law school course on technology contracts. So we had a lot of in-house expertise on those contract types. And we learned how to basically take the knowledge out of the experts' heads and program AIs that could really effectively review contracts for the issues that we knew mattered. And
this was before Gen AI, right?
This was before Gen AI. We were building our own AI. We were training our own AI models. So we were taking open source LLMs, like Hugging Face was the big one at the time. And then we were basically creating proprietary training sets and then training the AI. We had a whole process for how to do that. We invested a ton and learned how to do that really, really well. And we were actually at the cutting edge of building our own AI models that could understand and interpret contracts really well. But it was going to take years, many years for us to get actually where when OpenAI released GPT-4, we already are today. So they gave us that huge just adrenaline boost and shot in the arm that helped us move forward really, really fast, and also rendered a lot of the proprietary AI that we had built relatively useless. But we learned how to do something really well that actually proved to be, we think, a key ingredient in today's economy, which is how to take really powerful LLMs, large language models, but basically I like to use the word fine tuning, but not in the technical sense. Tune them in the sense of helping them understand what matters and what doesn't matter, and there's particular fact pattern. So that's what we did at Term Scout with that narrow set of contracts, and it kind of sparked a fire for us. And when LLMs came out, we all said, "Gosh, is there a way that we can do this? That we can open source the technology that we developed to do this and enable any expert in any contract type to go and build their own AIs." And that's what leads us to Screens, and that's what we just launched. So it's a really exciting time for us on the heels of this launch. We just pushed this out into the world 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, this is super exciting. So, I subscribe to a lot of like Bob Ambrosi's Law Next and some of these other places. So I know you got pressed somewhere with Screens, or maybe it was even just LinkedIn. But I saw it and I went to the website, and immediately some of this copy that you guys have on there was like, ending the billable hour type language. So like I don't think you said it, but you were probably billing time at that firm before you left and started Term Scout, right? So like give us your experience with the billable hour and why you're actively as a legal tech company talking about ending it.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that I think a lot about. When I go back to the time practicing law, and actually when I go back to my time as a consumer of legal services and startups before I even went to law school, one of the fundamental challenges that I struggled with and continue to struggle with today is the disconnect between the value that we get as consumers of legal services and the cost. And, I don't know that there's an easy answer in the traditional model. In fact, I don't think there is one. Spent a lot of time thinking about that too. Like, oh, what if you do flat fees and collars and caps and like all these other mechanisms? And, there are some ways to maybe, depending on the fact pattern of the transaction, what's needed to get a little bit of edge here and there. But by and large, when I was a lawyer, a lot of the bills that I would send to a client, I would feel, frankly, mortally embarrassed about. Like, gosh, this poor startup. I had a ton of empathy for the fact that this poor startup just needed me to do a quick review of this, Salesforce agreement. And of course, in that world, there isn't a quick review, and and it ends up being a multi-thousand-dollar thing. And that disconnect in value to me has always felt like um, a huge opportunity.
Mhm.
And we've been trying to figure out what that opportunity is for a long time. But that's part of the equation. So part of it is just sort of like, how do you better match the value to the cost in legal services? That's part one. Part two is actually from the provider side. I think there's a big opportunity here too. We spend a lot of time talking to lawyers. We work with a lot of lawyers. 99% of our paying customers today are lawyers. And so we're constantly kind of trying to figure out, what is it that you want? What do you think the future is? What do you need to make your life better, make your practice better? And what a lot of them tell us is, we want ways to feel less like a service provider that is beholden to this construct of hours in equals dollars out, and more unique ways. We want to function more like a software, like a SaaS business
Mhm.
than a service provider consultant. And we hate the idea that there's this opportunity cost, right, associated with everything we do in our personal lives. I think that from the provider side of the house, that's the big issue for me. I remember when I practiced law, it's just like, hey, everything that I do, in my personal time, I could be billing more hours. I could be creating more revenue for the firm, more partner profits, more, and you just have this opportunity cost that sort of leaks into your everyday life in a way that I think is really unhealthy. And I think is sort of a big part of the reason why a lot of providers are eager to figure out, well, gosh, how can I get some subscription based revenue? So I just have predictable revenue. Maybe it's not directly tied to the hours that I input, et cetera. So those are the two angles that we think a lot about, both the provider side and the customer side. And we think there's a lot of opportunity to make progress for both of those constituents.
I haven't told this story in a while, maybe over a year on the pod. So I'm going to say it again. And that is, because you just reminded me, because it's been so long. I've been doing this subscription law firm thing for 2 years almost now. So I remember I was 2 or 3 years into billing time, because I didn't do that in my first firm. I did that at the last firm I was at for 5 years before I left to do my own thing. And I started to think everything in terms of time equals money, time equals money. And I remember getting off the phone with my dad once. My dad and I would just have these long, great conversations. I was like, gosh, that was 1.2. That was an expensive conversation with my
Yep,
own father, right? And so,
totally.
like that is not a way to live, man. And that might have even been some of the early realizations I had. Like I didn't know it at the time, but subconsciously I was like, this is not a way to live. So there has to be a better way. Now, we like to talk about business models on the pod, so we definitely want to talk about ending the billable hour, but Screens is a really interesting business model, right? Because it's different than Term Scout. Term Scout, as far as I could see, was like B2C or B2B, right? Or both potentially. But this Screens is like a two-sided marketplace, right? Because it's like users, but lawyers, right, on the other side, or legal experts or legal productization experts on the other. So like, it looks like there's a little bit of a difference there. So, and there's difficulties with two-sided marketplaces. They got the chicken and egg problem, right? So maybe thanks to Term Scout, I'm just thinking out loud here. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. You had at least some contracts that were already ready to go into Screens with like the SaaS contracts and stuff, and you could have that available while you're building out this two-sided marketplace. So I'm just interested to know like what that business experience is like, maybe lessons learned, because as we, if you want more attorneys, which everybody, I mean, it's Screens.ai, what a great domain. And if you scroll to the bottom and look at the experts tabs, that's for you, my listeners, or /4-experts is the slug. And that's where, you have all this goodbye billable hour language. So yeah, obviously like I've put in my interest. So all of my listeners should be interested in this thing. But building, other than me promoting it on the pod, like building a two-sided marketplace is hard. So I know I threw a lot at you there. Go ahead and feel free to take it however you want.
Yeah. So first, let me just explain to listeners who are new to this and meeting me for the first time what Screens is. It is, as you said, a marketplace for lawyers or really any kind of contract expert to create and then publish their what we call screens. And a screen itself is basically a mini AI program that is created by an expert and designed to let others review contracts basically through the lens of that expert. Okay. So we have a number of screens that have been created and are already available on the marketplace. You can visit the marketplace at Screens.ai/community, and you can see all of the open source screens that are there. You can try them out for free. You should. Please share feedback if you do. But the basics of the idea is that to review a contract requires a specific set of skills. It's not just the legal analysis piece, it's also the wisdom, the experience of understanding, hey, for this particular fact pattern, maybe in this jurisdiction, for this contract type, these are the standards that should be met. And that's something that no AI is good at today, period, full stop, unless and until the expert tells it exactly what to look for. So Screens lets those experts go in and build out AIs and scale their expertise in a sort of essentially creating a digital product version of their expertise that others can use to review contracts in a repeatable fashion. So that's the idea behind it. And you're right, Matthew, it's a two-sided marketplace. There is a chicken and egg sort of challenge. And the jury's still out on where that shakes out for us. We only launched this 3 weeks ago. We're seeing really exciting traction on both sides. There've been a ton more downloads of community screens than we expected so far. So that's really great. The most surprising part, though, is probably the amount of interest that's coming from the experts, the creator side of the house. We're getting a lot of people coming forward and saying exactly what you just said. Hey, this idea of creating a digital product version of my experience really resonates. This is something that I'm looking for. This is a version of an AI implementation that I think I might be able to get behind. And so we've got a lot of traction on that side. And the thesis of the business essentially is that as more and more creators create their screens and then share those screens and use those screens in their own workflows, but also offer them up for others. And by the way, when you offer them up, when you publish a screen on a platform, you get to decide the business model for that screen essentially. So you can sell it as today, you can open source it for free. You can sell it for a one-time fee. And we're working on a few other pricing models that we expect to go live in the coming months that will enable you to charge for your screen on a per usage basis, for example, or on a subscription basis. So there'll be more pricing models that become available for creators as we move forward in this. So that's the overall sort of what Screens is and a little bit of insight into the sort of two-sided marketplace piece.
I mean, this is like, I hope this is one of these things that is not too far ahead of its time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
like this is so the future of delivery of legal services. Like to those of us using the subscription model, we get it. Like the hardest thing I do, and by the way, like Gavel is a sponsor of the podcast, and I guess like they kind of have their own like semi-competitive version with what you're doing, but like it's different. Like, because like what they're doing is they're still doing like productization of automations, right? Like you're training like an AI model. So I almost see it as maybe even a little bit complementary. And frankly, like if I'm the law firm, maybe I want to offer both, right? Maybe I want to offer both kind of things. But what we're trying to solve, and why I love the partnership with them, working with them, is because like it's all about productizing those legal services so you can get yourself out of practicing law. And so like this is a tool. Like I so look forward to being one of these like what do you call them? Certified screen creator. Like I want to invest my time into building out that thing because also I'm not billing my time. So like I find that as a worthwhile investment. But like so like I could compete with like LegalZoom and not necessarily directly with LegalZoom with like business stuff, but I could productize and use AI to like do all these other things. But I'll tell you what, it's hard. It's hard to find the time and the expertise to do it. So like I, the solopreneur, need the tool that does most of the heavy lifting for me, right? And like that's the hardest thing about productizing your legal services. So at least at the time of interview, I haven't been able to make a screen yet. But like that's what I'm looking forward to discovering is how can this help me just do the thing that I know is like a thing, but I don't have to there's less no code that has to go on with me doing it. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. And I mean, this was really at the forefront. Like this was one of our core design principles when we built this platform was it has to be just stupid simple to use, dead simple. And I think we nailed that one. When you go in to create a screen, it really is as simple as writing down what matters to you, right? So the hard part is developing the expertise, the wisdom that only comes with years and years of practice of actually doing the work. That's the hard part. But what we're pitching is the people have already done that part. You've already done the hard part. You know what should be in this contract type under this fact pattern. Now just go write it down and let us do the rest of the heavy lifting to go turn that into an AI that lets anybody just productize that lets anybody that makes it instantly operational.
Yeah.
And so, I'm really proud of the work that we did on the ease of use for screen creators side of the house.
And this is one of those things where because so much of the pushback we get on AI, and I'm just coming off ABA Tech Show, is well, what about the client confidentiality? But you're not actually like, well, like at least in the creation of the screen, like there's nothing confidential about that, right? So that's not a concern. But what about when the client uses the screen? Or well, they might not be a client because what if you're just productizing? I mean, it depends on how you're doing it. So I guess that's another important. I got to put on my real journalist hat from time to time, Otto. If somebody signs up to use a screen, through the platform, through the two-sided marketplace, it's one that I've made, right? Like, am I just productizing through screens? Is it something that I, as a lawyer, can use like in my practice, or are you trying to like prevent that attorney-client relationship from happening through the use of screens?
Yes, yes, and yes. You are creating, when you create a screen, you're publishing an operational contract review solution that is operational on the Screens platform. In other words, for anyone to use it, they do need a Screens account, and then they need to get their contracts into the Screens platform. Actually, we're launching a Word add-in this quarter. We're super excited about it. That'll let you use Screens and basically use the operational AIs that are built by experts right within Microsoft Word. This will be super exciting, but you'll still use the Screens platform to basically consume the screens, to utilize the screen. I forgot what the other part of your question
About
was.
like attorney-client relationship. Is this related to my law firm? It's not related to my law firm. These are
Right,
or aren't clients.
right. So yeah, no one should create an attorney-client relationship by virtue of usage of someone's screen, right?
Mhm.
Just like if you publish a blog article, Matthew, that says, "Hey, for NDAs, I think they should always have these standards should always be met." You're not creating an attorney-client privilege relationship when somebody reads that blog article and goes and does something with it, right? We think this is very much the same. So there should not be an attorney-client relationship created by virtue of the fact that somebody used your screen. We feel very confident in that legal analysis. And there's a lot of disclaimers and warnings to users out there saying that much and making that very clear. However, you can and are encouraged to use your screens, operationalize them yourself as well. So when you create a screen, you can publish it to the world and you can also use it privately. And either are options. So a lot of our in-house client customers today they're not here to publish screens. They have their own experts in-house. They're building their in-house screens and then they're operationalizing them and using them self in their own instances. We have some small law firms that are doing something really innovative, I think, which is starting to offer a subscription-based managed service offering to their clients where they say, hey, for whatever it might be, 500, maybe $1,000 a month, I'll build your screens for your top 5, 10 contract review types. you'll go self-service, review all your contracts against those screens. I'll maintain them. And then depending on the pricing and the arrangement that the law firm offers, you'll escalate this subset of contracts to me for actual legal review. In that case, you are taking on an attorney-client relationship. Those are your clients, right? And you're selling a subscription-based legal managed service to them. But we're working with a handful of small firms right now on developing those, and they look really awesome. Those to me are like one of the best answers to that value disparity mismatch, because we're leveraging AI to do the base of the pyramid, the heavy lifting, to add a ton of value, to supercharge the value that's delivered to the client. But we're not totally cutting the lawyer out, right? You want that lawyer there. When you get a contract back that's where the screen says, whoa, this thing's really bad, I need to talk to somebody about that, right? I need to negotiate it. Like there's more work to be done.
Right.
What we're doing is just level one, first pass review, sanity check everything, because we're big believers that everyone should sanity check every contract that they sign, because every contract that you sign creates legally binding rights and obligations, and you should have some sanity check in place, some systems in place to make sure that you're not taking on outrageous rights and obligations.
Right. Man, I'm going in so many. I'm like, my mind is in like a million different places here. So while I still want to finish on the security feature of it and like the preserving that information. So you promote on your website SOC 2 certified, which explain what that means for like people who like don't know what that means. When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database, since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com, and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Yeah, so let me just explain data security privacy posture from the ground up for us. One thing we learned at TermScout is that this is critical to our success as a company to get this right. And we've invested a lot more in sort of figuring this out for our clients. So there's two pieces: the privacy piece, like how are we using your information? What are we doing with it? And then the security piece. On the security piece, yes, SOC 2 certified. What that means is we've worked with an outside independent auditor who's gone through our systems and looked carefully at, the controls that we have placed. What kind of password management systems do we have in place? How do we manage hardware? Where do we store customer data? All of that. There are a rigorous set of standards that have to be met. They've gone in, they've audited all of that, and they've, given us their stamp of approval. Really hard to get. Took us a few years to get there as a company, but our systems, we think, are, state of the art at this point from a data security perspective. And all the documentation around those audits and everything is available to our customers. We have a security and trust portal on our website that you can look at. On the privacy confidentiality side of the house, with Screens, we took a really aggressive approach to preserving confidential information, because in order for it to work, people have to trust it. They have to feel comfortable uploading their contracts to it. So the promise we make to all of our customers on the Screen side of the house is we won't use your data for any purpose other than to provide the services and comply with applicable laws. Mm-hmm. And we're only using 2 sub-processors that will touch your data. And we have the same reciprocal contractual promises from each of those 2 sub-processors. We actually have a video on our website that our CTO created that walks through how we used our own platform to analyze those sub-processor contracts to make sure that we could actually make those promises and that they flow down through our stack of sub-processors of customer confidential information. So feel really good about that. And I can provide a link to that video, that help article for anyone who's interested.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, please do. And I'll add it to the show notes when this goes out. Since we only have about 15 or so more minutes, I just want to make sure we cover a few more things. So that is, I want to talk about, I want to give you some of the ideas that I'm thinking about and tell me if you think this is reasonable through Screens. And then I also want to talk a little bit about pricing, right? Like how does Screens make money? How do the lawyers make money? What are the ways you're looking at this? Because I think that's also important for my audience to hear, to think about how they want to price it for these other ideas that I'm about to spit out. So there are all of these different ways you could do this, but what I'm thinking is like an Amazon like approach for subscriptions, right? Like I could subscribe to Amazon Music separately for like, I don't know, $15 a month, right? But if I'm a Prime member, like it's only going to cost me $10 a month, right? So like I'm thinking about the unbundling and the rebundling ways that you could use a tool like this. So like if I could give to a client, well, here's my monthly fee for you to have access to this screen that I've developed, then you get that. Or you can just be my firm subscriber, and for a smaller monthly subscription add-on, you get this screen thing. Or maybe even I just bundle it into my main subscription. Alternatively, though, you might want to let people get access to that low-level thing because that's going to cost you a lot less. You've productized this. You've automated this. And now for a premium subscription add-on, you get human eyes on that, right? That's one of the things that you get. So those are like the two sort of versions that come to mind for this kind of a thing. So that's either one of those you think would be supportable by Screens?
I do. I think both of those are supportable. And I think they're both really exciting opportunities. And look, full disclosure, we're still in the very early days of kind of exploring pricing models and business models and having lots of conversations with folks like you and other creators to figure out what's the version that's most exciting. And I'll tell you, we've gone all over the place. I mean, we've looked at a YouTube model where everything is free on YouTube, right? Every video you watch is free, and YouTube pays creators, it's a nominal amount in the YouTube model. Spotify's the same model, right? Content creators get a small, in their case, I think a fraction of a penny maybe for every view. But in those worlds, it adds up. In our world, it would probably be a lot more than a fraction of a penny per usage. But it's just something like, hey, we're collecting the revenue, YouTube collects the revenue, and we pay out on a per usage basis. So everybody's incentivized to create great content
Mm-hmm.
and to boost the usage of that content. So that's an interesting model. It's not one that we're pursuing right now, but it's one that we've kicked around and debated. There's the model, there's the model that I like. The model you described actually is an interesting one of like a baseline subscription, a Prime like subscription that people might get access to a base set of screens, and then maybe a more premium version where they can add in different bundles of different curated sets of screens. We're certainly working on, I can't announce any of them yet, but we have a number of partnerships that are coming live soon. For people who are following the community, you'll start to see some really big, names, publications, and others who have a network of creators who are going to come on under a brand and under a curated list where it'll say, oh, all the authors affiliated with this third party brand have gone through this extra curation process, and maybe we bundle those and you get some sort of like added monthly subscription to get access to those. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the ways. One of the ways that I think is really interesting that we want to try soon is offering access to all screens on a per usage payment model. So YouTube, everything's free, but I think I can make the argument that getting an expert's opinion applied to your contract is something that we could probably charge on a per usage basis for. And so that anytime anyone uploads a contract, it's just, hey, if you want to try Matthew's screen on this, it's, I don't know, $5. If you want to try this other person's screen, it's $3. This one's $20. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's that amount of money to just run that screen over that contract once. And then in that case, obviously, we would do a revenue share with the authors. The general, the model that we're offering today, the V1 model, is anybody can go and sell their screen for a one-time fee, and we'll split the revenue.
So all really interesting ideas. And I do kind of like the YouTube model. And even like I don't quite know how it works in the back end because I don't have enough. I have more listeners to the pod than I have on my actual YouTube channel for this. So I'm not eligible for the creator program. But for like the YouTube subscribers who are paying, because they have two versions of this. You could pay whatever it is, $15-20 a month to have no commercials, no ads on YouTube. Like, is there a percentage pro rata split for if they're watching like your channel? Because now there are no ads running on your channel. Like, I wonder how that works in terms of a revenue share. I also wonder how it works for, because also YouTube has recently allowed, like, I could pay $5 or $10 or whatever the creator sets, just that goes right into that creator's pocket. And I'm sure YouTube shares a portion of that revenue. So they're doing that version too. They kind of have three business models going on. So I'm interested in that, but I'm also, I mean, look, I'm a good podcast host. I'm letting everyone know about my two sponsors, not just during the ad. So 650 has a really interesting business model. And so I don't know, do you know about 650? They spun out of Wilson Sonsini.
No, I don't think so.
So it's a business document, a business and employment, and I think they've also do privacy stuff now, a document database and automation platform. So you're paying for the doc and the automation in one. Now they're limited to like those practice areas, right? And the reason that I could have two sponsors that kind of compete is because they're actually really different products. One is bring your own docs. One is you pay us because we are the experts behind like these docs. And it's not AI, right? Like it's not like doing what you're doing. But here's their business model. I think it's really interesting, and I love talking business models here. Is you can go on their marketplace and you could buy one document. They have some free stuff like you, but you could buy like one document. I see this a single state employee handbook, $580. And you can buy that once. And that's a one-time fee. And this is why I'm telling you, I think your idea might work because this company's doing it right now. Then they have other things, website privacy policy, $280. You can just buy that once. You get the automation once. You use it. It's done. That's it. Or you can access this library and get unlimited revisions and access to all business documents for $180 a month.
I like it.
And
Yeah.
so
So they've kind of, they're offering all the options, which I do think if I'm a user, I like optionality.
if I'm already going to spend $180 on a media release, well, gosh, I might as well subscribe, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. And now I think they even have different, I like levels of, so like that's just business docs. The employment docs, that's a different subscription. If you want the employment docs, like the business docs is one subscription, the employment docs is another. And then if you want like all of the everything, that's also a premium monthly price. But then you get the automations, you get you get all the docs, and and I don't know if they lock you in beyond a month-to-month subscription or what the deal is there, because I haven't talked to them specifically about that. But they've been in business for several years now, and so I think that I've told other listeners or other guests on the pod about that business model. I don't see that business model being used a lot, and I think it's a really clever business model because it kind of nudges them towards subscription. It's like, well, I'm already going to be paying this. I'm already, I might as well subscribe. And then once you're subscribed, you're able to get the value of the subscription benefits. And you might as well, and then you're more likely to stay subscribed than use it right off. But you might, if it's okay with you, well, there's one more thing I want to say though. So Robbie Kelman Baxter, past guest of the pod, she was one of the first consultants for Netflix. She tends to caution against this, and here's what she says. She says it's hard to have two business models. It's easier to just have one. And so if you do this flat fee pricing and subscription, you're not going to be fully invested in just the one model. So in my business, I make everyone subscribe before I give them a la carte flat fee services. So I'm still invested in this subscription business. So there's something to be said about that. So just keep that in mind if you pursue this route. But I still think it's a really cool business model. And if I had to vote for one of the things that you said, Otto, I would vote for this business model.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that feedback and for the guiding advice. It rings true. We've learned as a startup, the more things you try to do, the harder it is to do any of them really, really well. And we'd rather do one thing exceptionally well than a lot of things only decently well. So yeah, we'll continue to kick the tires. And look, our North Star is kind of customer feedback. And as a two-sided marketplace, that's tricky because we have kind of two sides of users to contend with and to make happy here. But we're really deep. This launch 3 weeks ago was really designed to just get this out there and get us talking to as many customers as possible so we can continue to iterate and figure out what this is actually going to look like as we continue to develop it and build it out.
So right now, if any of the lawyers listening wanted to sign up to be an expert, I mean, is it free for them to do that? Is it easy for them to do that?
It is free and it is easy. Yes. And to get started, they should go to Screens.AI /experts. I think, is it experts or for experts?
-experts.
/experts. Yeah, it's also linked to in the footer of our website, Screens.AI. Go check out that page. That's where we lay out sort of the general value proposition to creators, to lawyers. And there are, on that website, there are links on that web page. There are a number of links to fill out a form which is just an expression of interest in getting started on creating some community screens. So go check that page out, go fill that form out. You should hear back from us within a day or so of completing that form, and we'll get you started really quick.
Yeah, and the revenue share, at least that's published on that right now, always subject to change. These podcasts are up forever. Is 75 to the creator of the screen and 25 to you if we decide to charge for the screen.
Yep, that's right. If you decide to charge for the screen, that's our sort of like standard offering right now. There are some caveats, like we're working on a few different deals where we play a heavier content creation role, where we're really supporting in more of a content creation capacity, and that might shift as a result of that. Or there's
Right.
some other factors, but that's a good starting point, and we're happy to offer that to really anybody who wants to come in and take the laboring war on creating their screens.
Right, and at least my audience tends to be more tech savvy, so maybe they need less support. But I think that's a fair exchange. If you need more support, you got to share more in the revenue. And since you already talked about how this is not establishing attorney-client relationship, you can do that. This is not an ethical fee splitting. This is a technology platform where you're a creator of a product on a technology platform. Yes.
I think that's right, but of
Yes.
course, that's not legal advice.
I know if there's no in the intro, there's no legal advice given, but it's interesting to live in the gray area. I think this is a little less gray though, because this is like we've established that this is not meant for like you could use screens. Like I could use it internally as a tool for my clients, but then that's a different type of a product, right? And probably there'd be some kind of eventually some subscription I'm paying if I'm just using it as an internal tool kind of a thing for my clients. I would imagine that would be
That's
like
right.
a fair
Yeah,
thing
if you
for
want
me
to
to.
use it for, if you want to create a workspace for each client, that's a different business model. That's a different pricing model. And that's that model I alluded to earlier in the podcast where I
Mhm.
talked about the managed service offering that some small law firms are creating. I think that's a really exciting opportunity. And if anybody's interested in that, they should also just make a note of that when they fill out that creator form. Just make a note of like interest in a managed service type offering. And yeah,
This guy right here is
awesome.
interested.
Okay. Well,
Seriously.
yeah, no, I know. I think we're speaking. I think we have a meeting tomorrow to talk about that specifically, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's possible. I look at the end of my day, I prepare for my next day usually.
Okay.
But it's
Well,
coming up. I think we do have something scheduled. So like, hey, let's figure out those logistics later because I want to make sure we get you done here with the show. We have a few more minutes. So another thing that I just want to bring up quickly, and then I'll ask you my little last question I ask all my guests, is another area that I think this could be super useful in is contract playbooks. So like some of my clients are small businesses, but they've been around. They have a bunch of employees. They have a bunch of different master services agreements, statements of work, all these things. I'm currently building out playbooks for some of these clients. So is there a way to like I could, although I see the value as being more broad screens, but I could like build like a playbook based screen, I'm guessing, with this product for a very specific client.
well, a screen is effectively a playbook, an operationalized AI playbook.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if your playbook is typically a set of preferred positions, requirements, aka standards, and maybe some fallback provisions and the like. Most of the things you would put in a playbook for a client that a client creates, you can build into your screen so that really you're applying the playbook in an automated fashion. So, absolutely 100%. That is kind of the design thesis of the platform. In fact, we used to, on Term Scout side of the house, we have an analogous product and it's called Playbooks. And it's this, but it's just a lot harder to build than on the screen side of the house where we really invested a lot more in figuring out, okay, how do we make these really simple to build?
Right, right. I mean, and the screens, this could be used for consumers, for like everyday people law. This could be used for businesses. So if I wanted to, like, I could use this to review anything for everyday people at a contract they might bring me, or a business, or even I could review like a complaint or a responsive pleading or something.
Totally. Any kind of document review project can be automated by creating the screen to automate the review of that document type. Really doesn't matter. It could be college papers that you're grading, it could be privacy policies, it could be briefs, infinite use cases. It really is a scalable, infinitely customizable document screening solution.
Like I know there are tools that do this, but like I feel like maybe I could hack screens to be like a discovery analysis type tool, maybe.
The thought crossed my mind as we were talking. I haven't done any testing on that. And
Yeah.
actually, I know very little about the discovery space, but But I don't see why it wouldn't work. If you have a set of documents and you're searching them for a defined list of criteria, that's what this was built for.
And
So
even if it's not like medical records per se, but it's just like answers to interrogatories, which are text-based answers, you know? I feel like maybe there's something there with that because I always try to find how can I push the boundaries of this tool. And I'm not a litigator, but I was a litigator, and so I'm like the way you're describing it. I think there might if I'm not billing my time in litigation, which there are very few lawyers not doing that unless you're a personal injury attorney, right? But like if I'm a personal injury attorney, I'm thinking like I got to speed up every single freaking process, and maybe a tool like Screens, while it wasn't originally designed for that, it might end up doing a pretty good job at something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to ask you the last question I like to ask all my guests, Otto, and that is a hot dog a sandwich and why?
Mm, interesting. Wow.
And a screen coming soon to answer this question.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. Meat in between two pieces of bread kind of fits the bill in my book. Yeah, I'm not a real deep thinker on the sandwich front, admittedly. This is not something I spend a lot of time thinking about, but it is a fascinating question, Matthew. And now I'm really excited to go listen to more of your podcast episodes just to hear how other folks have litigated this, really interesting question.
This is why. This is how I keep the listeners tuned in to the very end. So if they wanted, you mentioned where the experts could go, but if they wanted to follow up with you, Otto, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn certainly is a great way. You can also email me, otto@termscout.com.
Great. Otto, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Matthew.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.